Colombia's indigenous and rural protest movement, the Minga, continues to mobilize in Bogota, while President Duque has left the city. With just 5 days to go until the constitutional referendum, Chile continues to see acts of repression and police brutality. Authorities in Sudan have welcomed the United States' decision to remove the country from its list of state sponsors of terrorism, while agreeing to pay compensation to victims of 1998 terrorist attacks on US embassies. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Colombia, where the indigenous and rural protest movement, known as the Minga, continues to mobilize in the capital, Bogota, as it awaits a meeting with President Duque to address the escalating violence in the country. Meanwhile, President Duque has left the city to visit Choco department, and the government has not commented on when he will return to the capital. The rural indigenous movement is demanding that Duque respond to the systematic assassinations of social and indigenous leaders in the country's interior. Indigenous leaders read out a 10-point statement on the failures of the president, in which they demanded security in their territories, an end to massacres, and compliance with the 2016 peace accords. Meanwhile, social movements have described the sending of a government peace commissioner to the Cauca region to meet with indigenous leaders as a mockery of the situation. And the systematic assassination of social leaders continues in Colombia, with the latest victim being a former chief of the Embera indigenous community. Official sources have confirmed that Aurelio Jumi, former chief of the Embera community, was assassinated on Tuesday by paramilitary groups in the community of Playitas del Alto San Jorge, south of Córdoba. The indigenous leader was known for his tireless struggle to defend the rights of the indigenous population and its territory. The Ombudsman's office has condemned the bloody act and requested that the appropriate authorities launch an immediate investigation to identify those responsible for the murder, while demanding collective protective measures for the indigenous community. The official ballot count continues in Bolivia following the general elections held on Sunday, which, according to exit polls, saw the movement towards socialism secure a landslide victory. After having counted 57.72% of the ballots, the Mass Party has secured 49.55% of the vote. It is followed by the Citizen Community Alliance with 32.45%, while third place is occupied by the We Believe political alliance with 15.91% of the vote. It's important to remember that the victory of the movement towards socialism's presidential candidate, Luis Arce, was recognized by his rivals following the publication of the exit polls. Two former presidents of Uruguay resigned from their posts in the Senate this Tuesday. Former presidents Julio María Sanguinetti and José Mujica have officially left the Uruguayan Senate. The immensely popular Mujica previously explained his decision was based on existing health conditions, his advanced age, and the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic forces him to work from an office far from his hometown. During the Senate session, the careers of both former presidents were recognized, who committed themselves to continue actively participating in the country's political life. Progressive platforms in Haiti have organized a popular tribunal to symbolically denounce crimes committed by the United Nations Stabilization Mission in the country. The move is being promoted by relatives of the victims of the cholera outbreak, which was introduced by UN troops in October 2010. Relatives of the victims have called on Haitians to join efforts to condemn all the crimes committed by UN joint forces and their main sponsor, the United States, while also demanding an end to all forms of interference in the country, as well as the creation of a popular tribunal worldwide to reject the acts. Over 10,000 UN troops commanded by the US were deployed in Haiti in 2004, with the argument of pacifying the country after a second coup against President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. The UN only recognized the violations in 2016, while to date almost 1 million Haitians have been affected by the disease. This October 20th, Cuba celebrates its National Culture Day. This year, the date sees a special tribute to the diva of the world-famous Buena Vista Social Club, Omara Portuondo, who is recognized as a symbol of Cuban cultural identity. From Havana, our correspondent Nayara Tade brings us the details on the activities to mark the occasion.
For Maestro Santiago Alfonso, one of the essential figures of the culture and the world of dance in Cuba, growing up alongside Omar Portuondo has been his greatest school. For him, Omar is more than a symbol for Cuba. He considers that having dedicated the Day of the National Culture to the diva of Buena Vista Social Club is the greatest gift for someone who has represented her country in multiple stages worldwide.
Omar y yo, puedo decir que aunque
Omar and I, it can be said, despite a small age difference, have learned together, have drank together from the same source. The Cuban cultural identity is not unique. There are many ways to manifest it.
que ha recorrido el mundo entero y ha cantado en muchos idiomas.
Omar has been an artist who has traveled all over the world and has sung in many languages and has always maintained the presence of our culture. She has been to Cayo Hueso, she's always been to Pueblo Nuevo, she's always been to Havana.
Siempre ha estado en Pueblo Nuevo, siempre ha estado en La Habana.
Habana, mi vieja Habana.
The versatility of Omar Portuondo has allowed her to travel through most Cuban musical genres and through groups of diverse formats such as the Mulatas de Fuego and the Cabaret Tropicana, the Anacaona Orchestra, the quartet Las de Aida, and more recently in the famous Buena Vista Social Club. For Cubans, the bride of the feeling is enchantment, joy, sweetness, and Cuban cultural identity.
Si mis ojos te abandonaran.
Omar yo creo que es un símbolo de cubanía por la manera en que va rompiendo esos esquemas.
I believe Omar is a symbol of the Cuban cultural identity, in the way she is breaking those patterns, in the way she is performing from a very authentic perspective everything that relates to the code of our cultural identity in the music we are talking about. That is, she can sing you a song from Cindo Garay to Silvio Rodriguez, or Passing Through Fito, but with a mark or with a loyalty towards her own musical conception that is amazing.
Es asombroso.
In recent times, we have seen her supporting and giving way to young talents of Cuban music, such as the Fail de Orchestra, or dedicating a concert to the multinational TeleSUR for its 50th anniversary,
Felicidades, TeleSUR.
or adapted to the times of pandemic, recording from home her new album together with her son.
Just imagine, it's so nice, because I had to mark the entrances, mark the time, give the entrances to my mom. So many nice things happened there. Just imagine the nice things that happened at that moment. That is, we are doing a song that she says is by Alex Cuba. So she was playing, I was laughing, and she was laughing. So we had to stop recording.
Es que tiene una forma muy especial, ¿no?
It is just that she has a very special way of singing, that she never does anything the same way. She never sings a song, even though she sings it many times, she never sings it the same way. She always looks for a way to play with the melodies to make it different.
De hacerlo diferente.
For those reasons, Cuba dedicates the National Culture Day to that artist who gives herself away with passion and embraces everyone with her jovial smile, her simplicity, and that picaresque grace typical of the Caribbean island and all of America. Omar arrived this October 29th at her 90th birthday with the same spirit she faces the stages, healthy, joyful, and Cuban.
Nayara Tardo, TeleSUR, La Habana.
With just 5 days to go until the referendum to decide whether to redraft the Chilean constitution and who should be responsible for the process, the country continues to see acts of police brutality and repression of anti-government protests. To discuss these issues and the tense situation in the lead-up to Sunday's vote, we welcome our correspondent Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro, thank you so much for joining us.
Greetings from Santiago. That's right. We're in the process. Within 5 days, we will have this constitutional plebiscite referendum, in which the people will decide whether we want a new constitution or not, and who will write that constitution. The campaign is all polls say that the option approve will win by a wide margin. But what remains to be seen is whether the victory will provide the over two-thirds of delegates that will have to be elected after the referendum in order to overcome the 2/3 majority required by the rules of this new convention or constitutional convention that has to be elected, and which will in fact provide a veto to the forces that are against the new constitution and want to provide a new text that will not change things fundamentally, and just to be a cosmetic change to the current constitution, which was designed and imposed by force by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet in the 1980s. So what's at stake now is that whether the establishment, which includes the right wing in government now, which is an extremist wing of the right in Chile, and the center-right and the so-called center-left that have had shared government with the right over the past 30 years, and both of which share a flair for the neoliberal system that was imposed in the 80s by the dictatorship. So what the popular revolt, the uprising was demanding, and it's still demanding, is an end to the neoliberal system. And but the forces against this are very powerful. It's not only a political issue; it's an economic issue mainly. The pension system, privatized by Pinochet, provides for most of the funding for the main enterprises in Chile. It's also a source of cash for banks to lend to people. 11.5 million people in Chile are in debt, heavily in debt with the banks, because there is no other way to survive in Chile if you're not borrowing money. And but only 7.5 people are employed. So that's creating a bubble that will explode somehow, somewhere. And the pension funds are probably the main issue behind the discontent that has been growing up in Chile, because it's a factory of poor people. You receive less than 30% of what you were earning before what you were working, and with little or none social benefits, health, or mainly health, which is a main issue when you're old. So the popular revolt continues. There was a massive demonstration on Sunday in Santiago and in many other cities of the country. Massive, that was a mass of people which was not expected by many, which also was even more angry than before because of the consequences of the pandemic, which has left 3 million people unemployed.
And Alejandro,
the situation is very dangerous at the moment. It's unstable in Chile. Go ahead.
Alejandro, sorry for interrupting you. You were talking there about the protests, and we've seen widespread repression suffered by the Chilean people at the hands of the police. It's made headlines for the past year. We've seen 2 recent examples of the abuses of human rights by the police in Chile against young demonstrators. What can you tell us about these latest acts of police brutality and the ongoing struggle for respect for human rights in Chile?
Well, this is a long struggle because since the dictatorship, the police and the army and the armed forces never changed its doctrine or its methods. On the contrary, they have been developing new forms of repression over the past in democracy, or what we call post-dictatorship. In the last few months, taking advantage of the pandemic, the Piñera government invested heavily in new equipment for repressing demonstrations, and also for intelligence. And what we have seen in the last few weeks, when this uprising is recovering and taking on the streets once again, is that the repression is much more brutal, and they are also using infiltrators, intelligence, to provoke violence, burnings, arsonists, attack police headquarters in in several neighborhoods, especially in the working class neighborhoods where the protest is more powerful. And only on Monday, on Sunday, the police killed a young man of 25 years old man in one of these working class districts. And 2 weeks ago, they threw over to the river a youngster of only 16 years of age who did not die, but was thrown out of a distance of over 8 meters. And this created a lot of outrage in the country, because what we're seeing now is that they're using more chemicals, tear gas that they buy in Israel, and new equipment for repression, but it's not the same as it was before the pandemic. This time it's more effective, it's more brutal, and now we're seeing killings, which did not happen in the months of the uprising. So the struggle for this new constitution is also a struggle against impunity and also against the corruption in this police that you see every day, some kind of abuse by cops, be that in the context of demonstrations or otherwise in the normal life of people. And the corruption is going through all ranks of these carabineros, the police force of Chile, which many in this country are demanding to be dissolved and start from anew something that is truly democratic and respectful of human rights.
Alejandro Kirk, TeleSUR correspondent in Chile, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for offering your insight. President Donald Trump has announced that he will remove Sudan from the US list of state sponsors of terrorism once the country pays compensation for terrorist attacks. According to Trump, Sudan must pay $335 million in compensation to US victims of terrorism and their families. The removal of Sudan from the list would open the door for the country to receive much-needed loans and international aid to revive its battered economy. Sudan has been on the list since 1993, when al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden lived in the country as a guest of the government. The compensation would be for the victims of the 1998 attacks on US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, carried out by bin Laden's al-Qaeda network while he was living in Sudan. More than 200 people lost their lives in the terrorist attacks. Shortly after the US president's tweet on Monday, Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok responded by saying the funds had been transferred. And authorities in Sudan have welcomed the United States' decision to remove the country from its list of state sponsors of terrorism, while agreeing to pay compensation as a prerequisite to victims of the 1998 bombings of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania.
This decision will allow us to manage the economy with a better environment and totally new effective mechanism. Removing Sudan from the terrorist list will open the door widely for Sudan to legitimately return to the international community.
We have been working thoroughly for a whole year, the cabinet as well as experts, to achieve this goal for Sudan to return back to its right's legitimate position and for the Sudanese people to return to their life.
Addressing the nation on Tuesday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on the population to observe COVID-19 health measures ahead of the country's upcoming festival season. India ranks second in the world in terms of the number of confirmed coronavirus cases, having reported over 7.6 million cases since the outbreak of the epidemic in the country.
Friends, until the time there is a vaccine for this epidemic, we must not let our guard down. After a long time, we are seeing that in order to save mankind, work is going on a war footing across the world. Make sure to maintain 2 meters distance, wash hands frequently and wear a mask. I humbly request you all wear masks. I want to see you and your families safe. This festival season brings happiness and excitement. I want such an environment, and that is why I am time and again requesting this from each and every citizen.
And United Nations officials have called on Indian authorities to respect the rights of human rights defenders and non-governmental organisations operating in the country, following the amendment of domestic laws that restrict foreign funding of these groups that critics say are increasingly being used to stifle civil society voices.
The High Commissioner is urging the government of India to ensure that no one else is detained for exercising their rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. She also calls on the authorities to carefully review the FCRA for its compliance with international human rights standards and to release people charged under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act for simply exercising basic human rights that India is obliged to protect.
On Tuesday, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres noted that the Sahel region of Africa is at breaking point, with record levels of humanitarian needs, a deteriorating security situation and escalating violence, especially affecting women and girls.
The Sahel is a microcosm of cascading global risk converging in one region. It is a warning sign for us all, requiring urgent attention and resolution.
There's nowhere in the world that worries me actually quite as much as this region. I fear we are close to a tipping point, and that has potential ripple effects that could reach neighbouring countries and further afield. And really a preventable tragedy is looming. And we've seen a sharp deterioration over the past 2 years in humanitarian needs, and that is a symptom of that.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.